Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Amplify's podcast, the video podcast that helps you and your team maximize your potential. Today, I'm beyond thrilled to welcome Thomas Willemsen to the show. Good day to you, Thomas. How are you?
Hello, very good to be here. Thanks.
I appreciate you taking the time. So, Thomas, you have an impressive experience, more than 25 years of international leadership in pharma mostly, but you also work in BioTech. You are now the CEO of a medical device company called GaleMed Group, a world-class respiratory medical device company. Tell us more about this impressive journey, international journey of yours, and how would you define your leadership style today?
Well, thanks, Guillaume. Thanks for having me on this very interesting podcast. And I'm joining you here, as you can see, from my lovely home in Taipei. And I call it my home because we've been here for almost 20 years. And it's interesting. I mean, I've been here in Asia 25 years, studying in China, working in China originally for a German company, Merck, working later again in Taiwan, joining GSK in Taiwan, then moving again to China. So a lot of China and Taiwan, and then finally Takeda in Singapore for 5 years, BioTech in Singapore, Tessa, and now back to Taiwan for GaleMed. And so truly an international career, mostly in Asia, outside of Germany. I think my leadership style has been defined by this environment. I'm a German at heart. My values, I think, are very much coming from this. But I'm so used to work in this environment in Asia with a very specific language and cultural context that I sometimes wonder, I become half Asian, if you want. I mean, if there's too many foreigners in a room, sometimes I wonder what are all these foreigners doing here. So I've really assimilated almost a little bit into this cultural background, and I call it my home.
On this podcast, we love to talk about growth mindset, and I think as leaders, it's very important to demonstrate growth mindset, but also obviously to encourage a spirit where within your organization people feel empowered and trusted to test new things and to dare to do new things. I'll ask you simple questions, and I would like you to give us a chance to reflect on this a little bit. Would you say that you learn more from successes or from failures?
Yeah, that's a tough one in a way that I don't think it should be one or the other. I think we learn from both. Obviously successes are great because they confirm what you were striving for, and it can be, a professional success that you get a reimbursement for a product, or you get access for a vaccine. It's very meaningful. Or you get a promotion. I mean, you move from one layer of the organization to the next layer, and that's amazing because you've worked so hard for it. But failures are also exceptionally good as teaching you lessons. And I think it's not so much the losing as such, but it's how you respond to it and how you recover after that failure. And I've had various instances where, I came into a situation where an organization had failed, and where we had to regain the confidence and the trust of the environment, like it was in China when I moved there from Taiwan to take over the commercial operation for GSK China. And we had a huge crisis of trust with the environment there, and rebuilding this trust, I think, took a lot of effort and learning on our side. Or sometimes you're failing just professionally because you pursued the wrong objective, and then you have to admit to that and decide on course correction. And there are many examples in my career where I had to do that, be that commercial objectives or be that strategic objectives, or even in the case of Tessa, where ultimately we failed in gaining access to more capital and maintaining our quite incredible pipeline of innovative treatments for Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was in the end, of course, a failure because we could not continue the organization and the R&D effort was lost. But I think there's a huge opportunity to learn. And if ever I would do another biotech, right now I'm working in MedTech, I would definitely know how to ask the right questions first, and maybe also course correct faster.
Thanks for opening up on Tessa Therapeutics, which was indeed a biotech company developing cell therapies for cancer treatment, I believe.
That's right.
I think what happens also in the corporate world, I would like to see how much of it resonates, because you have been managing and leading people for many years now in organizations. People are focused so much on trying to look good and trying to look perfect. It's difficult to admit that we are not sure, that we don't know, that we want to try and we might fail, or even that we have failed. As a people leader, how do you create that climate, that environment where people feel comfortable sharing with you some failures and some tough times?
I think that's a fantastic question, and something I feel very strongly about. I think if you as a leader are not able to project a certain level of vulnerability, it will be very difficult for you to have a team that truly, shares with you their views, and where you have a what I always call a culture of trust, which is absolutely essential for a successful company. And I think it all starts with yourself. It starts with, first of all, sharing, and sharing things that are dear to you, sharing things that are private, maybe even. I'm often when I start a new role, I share with people a lot about myself. I invite them to my home. I introduce them to my family. I think it's very important for people to be clear and to understand who's this guy, and what does he do, how does he think, what are his values. And it's really important in a management team meeting that you project this level of vulnerability to admit that you don't know the answer, and that you also admit that you made a mistake. I always say to my team, making mistakes is totally fine, but repeating them, that's the problem. So, I have no problem with people making mistakes, because we all are, in this industry in particular, we're trying something new every day. This is an industry of discovery. This is an industry of trying out. The whole R&D spectrum is about trying something completely new. And of course, we will fail all the time. So how do we make sure that we fail in a productive manner? And the only way to do that is by admitting, that we did a mistake, and that we actually have to change something to reduce, the chances for failing again. And giving people that space to also, share their thoughts, and be very mindful, of course, how you respond to this kind of conversations, that you don't diminish people when you feel that they're wrong, or that you don't diminish them when you feel that they made a mistake, but that you actually say, okay, so this didn't go well. What have we learned from this? That is very important. Culture is everything. And if you as a leader can stand for that, for these values, people will follow.
So talk to us about the importance of taking on new challenges in your personal journey, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are often, people look at them as boilerplate statements: out of your comfort zone,
Right.
the box, do things differently.
Says the German who decided to live 10,000 kilometers away from Germany.
Exactly.
Settle in Asia.
I mean, I think that I'm pretty much the example for outside of the box living.
It sounds like it.
But look, I think if you have to be curious, obviously, to try new things, and I think curiosity is a vital driver of why I pick up new jobs. I also think I don't want to waste my time in repetitive experiences. It's just because life would be so dull if you would continue to do the same thing day after day. And we work hard, we work very hard, but not just for the paycheck. We work hard because we want to create something. Obviously, ideally something that is meaningful and has a purpose. So that is what's the driver that gets you out of bed in the morning. Now, pharma is an incredible space, hugely complex, and I've enjoyed my time in pharma tremendously, and I made great connections, met wonderful people, met some terrible people too, I mean, in every industry. But I learned a lot in the process. And then to move from pharma to BioTech was a huge change. Scary, very scary, because suddenly you were responsible for an end-to-end organization, and you were going very deep into science and into R&D areas that I was not, not knowledgeable enough for, because I'm not a scientist. But at the same time, it opened up a lot of new horizons, and I enjoyed it because I'm a curious person. I like to, understand how things can move forward, and I work very well with these R&D people, even if they're crazy professors types. They appreciated my common sense and helping them to structure their thoughts. And on the other hand, I appreciated that they explained to me cell therapy. Mind you, I didn't go very deep into the subject, but it was an incredible journey. And then now in MedTech, it's again a very different environment where it's a lot more commercial. It's a lot more nuts and bolts. It's a factory. It's people in blue overalls putting things together. Something very real. We talk to customers in Europe and in the US. We talk about supply chain. We talk about how to, get, hoses made of plastic, of items from A to B. And a lot of it is operations. But also there are new strategies to be built. There's teams to be put together. And you can find interesting, new, I would say, opportunities in all of these places. And they're all different. But, what makes them all common, I think, is the theme of leading people to a better place. And that's something I truly enjoy. And that has been my signature, I would say, in all these roles, that you connect with the people, you create a culture of trust, you define sort of what the vision and strategy should be, and then you move the team there.
Talk about Gelmed a bit more, because you guys manufacture single-use products for ventilators, anesthesia machines, and things of this sort, correct?
Yes.
So I was working for Karl Storz before. Karl Storz is in the medical device, minimally invasive surgery business, and we had reusable products, and we also had single-use products. And across the board in medical device, I know that whenever you sell single-use product, the question of sustainability and waste management is an important concern for your customers, right? Hospitals or healthcare at large. So how do you manage the challenge of sustainability, and is there a way to help reducing the CO2 burden in your business?
I think that's a fantastic question, Guillaume, and I think that's something where we spend quite a lot of time on in Gelmed to figure it out. Now, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, this is a very wasteful industry in the sense that we manufacture mainly the equipment that connects the patient to the machine. So be that the breathing hose, the anesthesia hose. So these are essentially plastic hoses, masks, intubation or non-intubation. So a lot of these tools and connectors and things are one-time use. Why? Because cross-contamination risks are high. And while it is possible to make them reusable, the cost of cleaning, the environment costs would be immense. And also, there is always this risk of cross-contamination remaining. And for the hospitals, it is just not possible to absolutely guarantee that there cannot be any contamination. And therefore, it really doesn't make sense, especially with the experience of COVID. We have become very, very careful about taking such risks. So all of that stuff is burned. And of course, that means, fossil fuel used to manufacture them and then burned, so that basically you have this very, terrible effect of fossil fuels being blown into the atmosphere and increasing, the global warming. So I think the solution to that is that, so what are possible areas to address in terms of reducing CO2 footprint? You could talk about, actually, I think there's three components. Either it's making them reusable. We already identified that that's not feasible. Or you could save on the transportation and the manufacturing in terms of, the process of manufacturing. But there's very little impact that you can have. I mean, transportation, think about it. You're shipping these things in huge container ships with, thousands and thousands and thousands of hoses in one container. It's not going to make much of a difference, really, if you put a few more containers on the ship or not. So the real solution has to be the material. And what we are currently working on, and this is really something quite cool because we're the first in the world to do that, is to create breathing hoses that are made out of a substance that is plant-based. Now, it's not going to be fully plant-based. It's not going to be 100%. There will always be a bit of plastic component too, but we can reduce the plastic component to a very small amount. So let's say if we had an 80% plant-based anesthesia circuit, then imagine that story. There is the plant that takes the CO2 out of the atmosphere. It then is manufactured into a hose, and then it's burned at the end of the cycle. The CO2 is given back into the atmosphere, but it's still the same CO2. That reduces the CO2 footprint dramatically. And we're still, the product is not yet ready for the market. We are still in the process. We've done many cycles of getting the right mix, making sure it doesn't have a smell, making sure that it's exactly the same use as a fully plastic-made one. But we're very close. And when we come to the market, hopefully next year, this will be a huge innovation that I think will change the market and could be a game changer for the company.
Yeah, and especially, if you are saying that the R&D has been progressing for a while and you are thinking of a launch as early as next year, in the big scheme of things, we know in this industry that sometimes things take many years. So you are not very far from commercializing it. That's exciting.
Exactly.
Very big, I agree, big game changer.
And I just came back from Europe, Guillaume, where I talked to a number of big customers. So GaleMed is a company that is predominantly serving OEM customers. So, 70-80% of our business is OEM. And the feedback has been tremendously successful. And especially in Northern Europe, not just in Germany, but also especially in Scandinavia, there is a very, very strong push from the government to ask hospitals to reduce their CO2 footprint. So once there's some traction in this, it will actually change the market environment quite quickly. And there are a lot of examples already on the market where products that had these sustainability features were able to penetrate the market quickly. And I think it's a very meaningful, purposeful direction to take. And I think this is where the magic happens, that you can also drive a company forward, that it's not just about numbers, but it is really about making a change and making a difference and having a positive impact. And with this, range, and of course, right now it's one product, but it's going to be a range of products that have this sustainability label on it. I think GaleMed is going to position itself as a very prime company in this segment.
From experience, what are the ingredients needed to drive change and innovation successfully in large and complex matrix organizations?
I think the key to changing an organization is to connect, basically to give a purposeful reason for the change. So change for the sake of change is very hard, if not impossible, to implement. And so, when you see these large matrix organizations that are doing, reorg after reorg and create new departments and then close them down again, and headquarters and close them down again, and regional structures, people get very cynical after a while, and say, the usual suspects get invited. McKinsey is coming along. Everybody is already knowing what's going to happen, and I think that these projects often fail because people haven't really understood why do we need to do this. And of course, cost cutting can also be a purpose when you connect it to what are we doing with the resources, because there is obviously in pharma, there's R&D, which is driving everything, and you need to make sure that you have enough oxygen in the R&D organization so that something can come out of it. I think very often it's the storytelling and the genuine, truthful engagement of employees that is the key to successful change. And I've been in many change initiatives and projects in Takeda, in GSK, of course, in Merck, where when it's under my remit, of course, in a big organization, very often things are beyond your scope, and then you just have to play along. I was always very mindful of explaining, very early on, why are we doing this? What will the future look like? Where are we today? Where do we want to go? And why do we have to be there? You have to put things into a context. And I think it's very vital for change, for people to understand what is the reason, what is the context, and if they go to the next stage of change, what have we, you have to take them along. This is not a one-time thing. Very often change projects fail because they start off with a big powwow, with a big effort, and then the McKinseys of the world leave the office, and everybody goes back to usual practice. So it's actually an ongoing process where, be that with visual metrics, or be that with storytelling, or be that with sharing, you have to keep on telling people how we are doing. Are we still on the right track? And when we have achieved a milestone, that's shared with everybody so that people start to experience this as a positive journey. It's really difficult. Change is very hard. But I think you probably have to treat everybody else like you want to be treated yourself. We've been the subject of change in many instances, and sometimes we feel the frustration and the cynical behavior comes, and that if we only had been told what the real reason is, we would have been much more willing to change.
And that's a great point. I read a research recently that was talking about these topics about change management and so on, and it was more or less saying exactly what you're saying, which is people are not necessarily fighting change per se, but they are often pushing back when the change or the reasons for change are unclear, and they are not feeling that they had a chance to be part of the discussion or co-create that future state. Of course, it's hard to have a conversation with 75,000 people. I get that. But I guess there are ways of involving stakeholders early and indeed paving this journey together, as opposed to having something that pops out of the box overnight.
I think that you're right. Absolutely. I think that sometimes it doesn't really matter even so much what comes out of these initial brainstorming sessions, because, let's face it, some of these changes are, just because of the industry is moving on. Sometimes you just have to accept that, you cannot continue to sell the same stuff decades after decades, and the industry is moving on, and therefore we have to change with the new trends or the regulations or requirements. So there's a certain necessity for that. But bringing people in at the beginning of the process, as you just described that, I think that's something, for example, I've done here with Gilbert, I've done it with many other companies before. Bring everybody together, have a huge huddle, have a brainstorm, use something to break the ice. I love to use things like MBTI or Insights, where you talk a bit about everybody's own ways of working and character, so that people start talking about themselves. And then suddenly you have a great platform for people sharing ideas. And even if you don't end up using all of them, it doesn't matter, because people will just appreciate that they've been part of the process. And they will be much easier buying into your suggestions when you say, this is where it started.
100%. That resonates a lot with my personal experience as well, and what I see other customers doing or not doing. You are obviously the CEO of Guillaume today. Can you shed some light on your own experience and the success recipe that allowed you to get there?
I didn't have a plan, put it that way.
Right.
A lot of things happen by serendipity and chance. And I wasn't 15 and decided that I will go to China and learn Chinese and become a CEO here. Right. This is what people often say when they write their biographies and stuff. I think it's, do what you feel passionate about. Bring a positive mindset to the table. I think look at the world, and ask yourself what can I do here? What can I change? And what opportunities are there? Rather than what can I criticize? What can I make fun of? It's very tempting, especially in big matrix organizations, to become very dark and cynical, because frankly, a lot of stupid things are happening every day, and you see them, and you can make jokes about them, but you have to be very mindful to not be dragging yourself and your team into this dark space of basically just being cynical and negative. So I think a certain sense of a positive mindset, enjoying what you're doing, and if you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. Life is short. I've changed because I started to not enjoy things as much as I used to. A big step for me was to go from pharma to BioTech. And yes, of course, I had reached a pretty high point in Takeda. I was the head of Asia Pacific. So, you can't get much further while in Asia. But I also felt a bit, bored to some extent with the big pharma game, and I was looking for something smaller, immediate, and I was willing to take the risk for it, and of course supported by my wife to do it. But it's important that we sometimes take these decisions so that we remain fresh and crisp and hungry, and don't become entitled and negative and lazy. So, and if you do that, you will be successful. I think that we all look for the people who are can-do attitude, that people come into the door and say, I have an idea and let me do it, rather than, I have an idea, let somebody else do it. I mean, people who actually bring initiative to the table, we love those people. We want those people. We look for those people. We never have enough of them. And be one of those, and you will end up where I am, or maybe even much further. I mean, like, I'm the CEO, yes, but of a very small company. I didn't make it all the way to the top of big pharma. Other people do, and they may have, skills that I don't have, or tenacity that I didn't have, so I think there's a huge opportunity for everyone, but you have to have that positive mindset and this willingness to change and embrace opportunity of change.
Thomas, this has been very inspiring. Thank you so very much for taking the time to be on the show, to share your experience, to shed some light on your journey, but also, inspire us.
Wonderful, yeah. Anytime, Guillaume, and when I come to Singapore, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. You take care, and see you soon.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.